All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this one, I wanted to really focus in and talk about Zach Wilson's trade suitors. It's no secret at this point that the Jets are looking to move on, whether that's, comments from Joe Douglas, general manager, Robert Saleh, even Aaron Rodgers kind of alluded to the fact that Zach Wilson might be playing on on another team next season. So in this one, I wanted to go through some teams, talk about some likely destinations, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. Where do you think Zach Wilson will end up? Personally, I feel like Zach really needs two things. Number one, he needs some time to develop. And then number two, I think he needs to get with a really good offensive mind, right? So whether that's an offensive coordinator, whether that's a head coach, I think if Zach could have time to develop and can work with an experienced, creative offensive mind, Zach could potentially find some more success in the league. So before I dive into the three teams that come to mind, there's three honorable mentions, if you will. The first is the LA Rams, because when I look at the Rams, they have, obviously a great offensive mind in Sean McVay. McVay is known for being able to identify talent and also maximize talent. Right, I mean, we're seeing that with Puka this year. Granted, it's at wide receiver, but Cooper Kupp wasn't like some top 10 pick. There's so many players that have came through the Rams system that have developed under Sean McVay. He really seems to maximize talent. So, if you take a guy in Zach Wilson, somebody who has a really high ceiling, has mobility, has crazy arm strength, has some playmaking ability, and you put him behind a Matthew Stafford, along with the Sean McVay coaching him up in practice, I think this could be a really, really nice landing spot / destination for Zach. I mean, if you look at Matt Stafford, this is somebody who he's been a consistent franchise quarterback. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's faced adversity. He's up there in age. So he's seen his fair share of defenses. I think he'd be an excellent mentor for Zach. And all of a sudden, the LA Rams could have their potential franchise quarterback waiting in the wings for a season or two behind Matt Stafford. But the big holdup here is the fact that the Rams offensive coordinator is Mike LaFleur. Now, the reason, the reports that were coming out at the time when LaFleur was initially fired from the Jets, it was that LaFleur and Zach didn't mesh. They didn't get along and they couldn't make it work. Now, how accurate is that story? We don't know, right? They could have just put that out there because LaFleur, was scapegoated and they needed to have some sort of reasoning behind it, reasoning behind the firing. So, to me, I think the Rams, it's a team that makes a lot of sense. But if Mike LaFleur is the offensive coordinator, are they really going to go out, trade draft assets or an asset to go get Wilson, somebody who, again, a report is out that those two guys cannot get along and they can't work together. So that's the big, question mark for me. I think another team too is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers have so many things figured out defensively. They have playmakers, obviously, a steady running game with Najee Harris back there. But when I look at quarterback, the Pittsburgh Steelers, to me, haven't really had the development side of it, right? So although there's a need there, although the jury's still out on Kenny Pickett, and they need depth at the position, I feel like with Zach, I just don't know if he would, if he could go to Pittsburgh and develop the right way. Trubisky's when they acquired him, he was a younger quarterback, hasn't really shown a whole lot. Mason Rudolph was drafted by the team, hasn't really showed a whole lot. Kenny Pickett, first round pick. Again, jury's still out. We don't really know. So with adding another young quarterback to the mix, somebody that really needs a good offensive mind, somebody that needs time to develop, somebody that needs a good infrastructure in place to grow as a quarterback and to reach his full potential, I don't know if Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense in that regard. And the last honorable mention is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this is obviously a situation where Zach would be coming in as the 100% guaranteed backup and wouldn't really have a long-term future in Kansas City. It would be in the event that, he would play in the event that Pat Mahomes got hurt, or he would just go to Kansas City, have, a young, exciting, high-flying backup quarterback for a couple years, and then ultimately move on to another team. I think if we take a look at Zach Wilson's skill set, people were calling him his pro comparison was Patrick Mahomes back at BYU. They were doing that for a reason, right? The shiftiness in the backfield, the playmaking ability, the arm strength, the ability to throw from different arm slots as well. I think if anybody can make it work, it would be Andy Reid. In the event that Pat Mahomes had to miss, an entire month or 2 months or something like that, Zach Wilson can go in there, maybe a year or two down the line, working directly with Andy Reid, and they would find ways to make it work. But at the end of the day, I do kind of feel like it's a long shot because the Chiefs would have to, take on quite a bit of money here for Zach and give away an asset to be the guaranteed backup for the team. I mean, they could just go out there and throw out a cheap 1-year contract and bring in a veteran. So that's kind of the discrepancy there. So getting onto my top 3 teams here, I guess we'll go backwards to to first here. Coming in at number 3, I think the Seattle Seahawks makes sense. Seattle's a team that, and granted, they just fired Pete Carroll. We don't know who their next head coach is going to be, but there's a rumor that Pete Carroll could just continue his career within the Seahawks organization. And if that's the case, chances are they're just going to get somebody to follow the trends, follow the culture that Seattle already has in place, not somebody to come in and blow the whole thing up, try to install a bunch of different things. If that's the case, Zach, again, makes a lot of sense. Right off the bat, Drew Lock's a free agent, so he would be coming in as, the backup, the QB2, if you will. The one thing about Pete Carroll and this culture is they take chances. They like selecting players. They like adding players with high upsides, high ceilings, and great physical attributes. And Zach possesses both of those things. Now, Zach is a bit injury. He's sustained some injuries throughout his Jets career and BYU career. He's not the biggest guy out there, but when we just purely talk about arm strength, when we purely talk about mobility, Zach brings those to the table. So again, Seattle, a team that's known for liking those physical traits, I could see saying, hey, you know what? Let's dish out a late round pick, or let's dish out a futures pick. Go bring Zach in. We can let Drew Lock walk because he's going to sign, he's going to be one of the better backup quarterbacks on the open market. He could go to a team where he wants to, fight for, a competition or a starting competition. But Zach, I just don't know if he's in the place to hit a team right now and immediately be the day one guy. Going to Seattle would give him an opportunity to sit and learn and develop with Shane Waldron. And I do feel like Wilson working with Shane Waldron in that style of system would fit. There's a lot of similarities to what he was doing his first 2 seasons with the Jets. So, the West Coast style. So that's number 3. Number 2 is the Denver Broncos here. Now, we heard the report initially that the Broncos could be moving on from Russell Wilson, or are going to be moving on from Russell Wilson this offseason, which clearly leaves a massive hole at the quarterback position. What are they going to do? It's not like they selected a guy in the top 10 and he's ready to go right now. No, it's Jared Stidham. And also, the Broncos won a bunch of games this season. They're not picking top 3. They're not picking top 5. They don't have the luxury of the Commanders at 2 or the Patriots at 3. No, they are, they're kind of in a tough spot because now that everybody knows that the Broncos are probably going to be moving on from Russ, it's pretty obvious that Denver is going to be making a move. They're going to be adding talent. And I could see Sean Payton saying, you know what, we're going to load the room up with guys that I feel like I could specifically work with. And they might range from skill sets. It kind of reminds me of the Buffalo Bills back in the day when they first hired Rex Ryan. They had EJ Manuel on the roster. They brought in Tyrod Taylor. They brought in Matt Castle, and they just said, you know what, we're going to let the best man win. We're going to go into the competition with no sort of biases. We don't care about contracts. We don't care about draft status or names or anything. Best man's going to win. I feel like Sean Payton, if these reports are accurate and Russell Wilson is no longer going to be a Bronco, they will move off of him. I could see Sean saying, hey, you know what? Give me a guy who has an extremely powerful arm, somebody who can make plays off script, somebody who really needs coaching, somebody who could potentially thrive if he has a good structure in place. So, as we all know, Sean Payton definitely thinks highly of himself, highly of his offense. It's his way or the highway. I could see, again, maybe a Stidham, Zach Wilson, and then they go out and they sign like a veteran free agent, potentially draft somebody in the mid to late rounds, and then just let all 4 go to work, right? who's going to win, who's going to be the backup quarterback. We're going to find out this offseason. I do feel like, and also, right, Zach Wilson's arm strength in the high altitude is crazy to kind of think about as well. So the number one team that I feel like makes the most sense for Zach Wilson is the Minnesota Vikings. So right off the bat, they have a great offensive mind at head coach. Kevin O'Connell, he looks to be there for a long time. O'Connell's from the McVay tree, right? And much like Shane Waldron before, who also is from the McVay tree, O'Connell has an offense in place that I feel like Wilson can step into and have some familiarity with it, right? He can understand the concepts and the scheme, so it kind of has like that little jump start, as opposed to somebody just walking in completely blind. So that's number one. Number two is the fact that O'Connell, to me, has proved that he is a solid head coach when we look at just the organizational aspects of the Vikings. I mean, this is a team that, ran through 4 quarterbacks: Kirk Cousins, Jared Hall, Nick Mullins, and Josh Dobbs, and he was making it. These guys, granted, none of them really set the league on fire. Kirk Cousins looked solid early, but he was making it work. I think Zach, out of all 4 of those guys, has the most upside. I think out of all 4 of those guys, Zach has the biggest arm. I think out of all 4 of those guys, Zach has the best mobility. So if you're looking at pure potential, pure ceiling, Zach could be pretty enticing for a young, creative offensive mind who's making it work with guys that frankly aren't as talented, aren't as physically talented as Zach. Now, of course, there's a whole mental aspect of it as well, but I think, with Kirk Cousins being a free agent and the Minnesota Vikings picking at spot number 11, they're not in a position to select one of these top dogs up at the top of the draft. Maybe they're looking at the QB situation next season where they bring Kirk back for like a 1-year deal. Kirk supposedly is willing to take a hometown discount. They could bring him back, mentor Zach for a season, and then all of a sudden your franchise quarterback is waiting in the wings, right? Much like the Jets planned initially when acquiring Aaron Rodgers for this season. This past season in 2023. So I think Minnesota makes a ton of sense. And then, of course, when he does step in, he's playing with the game's best wide receiver in Justin Jefferson, a nice young rookie in Jordan Addison. Brian Flores has the defense playing well. I really feel like Minnesota is just a couple of pieces away from really turning a lot of heads on a consistent year-to-year basis. I think they found a gem in Kevin O'Connell, but they do need to lock down that long-term franchise quarterback. And in my opinion, Zach Wilson for the Vikings could be worth taking a flyer on. Again, if you put yourself in the mind of a really smart former NFL quarterback in Kevin O'Connell, and you're looking at somebody like Zach, because it's not like Zach can't make throws. It's not like he can't move. It's not like he's incapable of making throws at the NFL level. I think because he has it in him to do that, if you are a really good offensive mind, all you're seeing is potential with Zach. But again, how big of a mental hurdle will it be for Wilson on a new team? Of course, that question is we're only going to find that out with time. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What team are you thinking that Zach is going to end up with? Do you think he's going to be fighting for a starting spot? Do you think he wants to just strictly be a backup? That was kind of the route that Geno Smith took, sitting behind Eli Manning, sitting behind Phillip Rivers, sitting behind Russell Wilson. And ultimately, his time came and he took a hold of it and earned a big contract. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, go Jets.